And I'd like to introduce Bob Qureshi, who is the founder and CEO of a viewing facility in the UK called iView. Hi, Bob.
Hello, Ray.
Bob, tell us a little bit about what iView is and what it was doing pre-COVID.
Well, iView is a viewing facility, as you've mentioned. We have one in Leeds. We had one in Warsaw, and that tells the tale of what's happening over the last year. And we have one in central London. It's been awarded the best viewing facility for 3 years in a row. January and February of 2020 were our two greatest months in the 7 years that we've been trading prior to that. So as a business, we've been doing incredibly well. We all know what happened after that. We hit this term that I use called the coronacoaster. It suddenly came upon us, and we as market researchers generally are used to change. We're used to the challenges. We're not frightened by change. I think we're all project managers at heart. We like to see a problem, see what's there, and how can we work our way around it. Often there's a start, a beginning, and an end to all of these kind of issues. I think the issue that we had, and I think many others felt it too in our industry, was that when we had this noise, particularly in the UK and around the same time the rest of the world in March, we thought this was a 1 month, 2 month, maybe 3 month issue. And by the summer, it'll all be back to normal and the world will shape up. And so on that basis, we put all of our plans together, assuming we'd have a 3 month closure. And this is on the back of a wave of 3 or 4 years of incredibly good growth, not just for us, but all the viewing facilities across the world, if you like. We work very closely with our US partners, Fieldwork Network, and they have a number of facilities across the US, and we work with them, and they've been doing incredibly well too. But then to suddenly find that things are outside of your control, you don't quite know when people will be allowed to get out and meet, that put a big challenge in front of us.
And there was a sort of a brief period in the summer when things started to come back to some sort of normality, but things changed. What sort of things did you need to put in place, and what were things? Well, I know that people were doing the similar things in the States.
Absolutely. Up until that point, the governments in each of those countries that were affected put in place certain measures that if you were going to go back into a face-to-face environment, hospitality, catering, for the UK, and in particular England, July the 4th had a different meaning as it might do in the US, where it might be Independence Day. We in the UK saw that as the day the pubs would open. And if you're a Brit, that's probably the most important thing. But indirectly, it meant that we too could open up. And that meant that we had to have in place all the safety measures, the COVID protocols that the various medical authorities have put in place about social distancing. When you come into our venue and many other venues, you're held up with a gun, but a temperature gun. It's put on your forehead to see what temperature you have. Sanitizers all over the place, perspex screens, glass screens, spacing, rearrangement, reconfiguration. And I can't thank, in my personal case, my team of Sam, Vivian and Maddie enough for the work that they did. But that is echoed across all the facilities. And there's far too many for me to mention across the world, and in particular here in the UK, the issues that I'm closest to.
And how long, actually, just back up on that. How did it go when people started running groups again, face-to-face depths, tasting sessions?
Well, that's a really good question, because of the social distancing, you had to have 2 meters to start off with, and here, or 6 feet in the US, for example, you had to move to 1 meter plus, which only allowed a certain number of people in any confined space. What that required for us was to reconfigure the way in which the work was taking place and working with our clients who were coming in. We found a lot more depth interviews, a lot more mini groups, and those facilities in the UK that have rooms that can open up, where you might have had a partition wall and you could have had 2 focus groups, you were using the double space to run 1 focus group of 8 people, where normally you could have had 2 rooms between 8 to 10 people. So it was a complete remap, a complete reconfiguration. we weren't just as an industry concerned with and worrying about the clients and the participants coming in. And by the way, the show up rate for participants, 100%. If you over recruited 110% than you needed, people were so happy to get out. They were so happy to get out, but not only were they getting out and coming to the facilities, they could use that time to visit other retail outlets while they were around in town. The main issue that we have as a premises-based operation, we have rents. We have municipality or business rates. They don't disappear. And that was a challenge for us in the market research industry, and for those of our audience who are listening in. The local councils, the municipalities, the local authorities didn't quite know where to position us, because we weren't quite seen as a restaurant, a wine bar, a retail hospitality place, or an event space for weddings or for other gatherings. We had to really fight our case. And one of the things that we did here in England, and I know that Fieldwork Network did that and are doing it in the US, is create a new word called collaboration rather than competition with our competitors, if you like. We all got together and canvassed the local authorities and put some information to them to describe to them that we are a public hall as such. And as public halls are closed, we are halls of spaces for the public to come in and give us their opinions and views. We managed to get the rates relief, and to put that into perspective, for a company like ours, it's 15% of all of our costs going out as the rates alone. And if you've got no business coming in, you need to stop hemorrhaging in any mitigation that you may have. So from a two-part, the research design and methodology changed, and I've been listening to intently to the speakers we've had before, in particular Patrice and Holly. Clients did what they had done for quite some time, but accelerated, in my opinion, the path to online related studies, trying to make sure that the clients that they had, their work was being done, but trying to take advantage of all the learnings they had. And the new platforms, well, they're not necessarily new, but the ones that have suddenly come to top of mind, such as Zoom, such as Teams. I mean, I'd never heard of Zoom until this started. I'd heard of Teams, I'd heard of a couple of others, but I'd never heard of Zoom. And of course, some of our web streaming providers, Focus Vision, HTD, Vocal Views, all of these companies came to the forefront to provide their services to help us and our clients to find another way to get projects done. We know there are certain types of projects that you just can't do online. You know, there's usually a way around it to try and find a way to do it, but it's not necessarily quite the same. But it's been wonderful to see the way organizations have pivoted. We too have accelerated our own plans from saying, well, we thought we'd always be a premises-based business. We too have had an educational learning and accelerated our involvement in online research. So we too have a platform. We're doing all the things that help our clients, because they do come first. But I think from a face-to-face point of view, during this period, when we opened briefly in the summer, and again very briefly afterwards, in that month of just before the second lockdown, and before Christmas or winter holidays, depth interviews, mini groups, medical, healthcare, UX studies, that is where the trend was going. Everything else, and I'm sure my fellow panelists will agree, wasn't so much us, the moderators, keen to come in, the agencies keen to do the work. We're standing at the front door with the keys open. The end clients, the corporates, they have had certain rules put in within their organization for fear of getting anybody in a vulnerable position to say, stay put, you mustn't go out. So we did run a couple of projects that Sam was involved in, where we actually ran the study and all the clients streamed in. So the participants came in and we did the moderation and we did all of that. So it's what we see and we hear elsewhere about how, I suppose, smart we are in the way that we can adapt ourselves to what's happening around us. So over the last year, we've had to really change the way in which we operate. And in particular, how collaborative we have become. I would seldom talk to my London-based competitive viewing facilities unless we had some work for them or they had some work for us. Now I know their first names, their second names, or they've got a dog in their house, where they live. It's just so good to see us working together. And I must commend the Insights Association in the US, the Research Society in Australia, and the Market Research Society in the UK, because without them, we would not have had the government lobbying that we needed to categorize us in an area so that we could, if you like, with officiality, I think I made that word up, but with some degree of confidence to be able to say to our clients, we are allowed to do this. And for those of you who don't know, in the UK, we are part of the trade of media and culture and sport, and we come under wet laboratories. And for those of you thinking, what are wet laboratories? It's where you do testing of viruses and chemicals and various things, lab testing. We come under the same category as that. So it's regarded as essential research. So whilst this current period, we've been under lockdown, we do have dispensation to carry out core essential research. For example, if we've done some work on diabetes pads and devices, and I know other agencies have too. So pivoting, working together, working with government, working with our societies, but also I want to thank you, Ray, and also organizations such as yours, which give me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the viewing facilities and all that we're striving to do. We expect change to happen. We don't expect it to be the same as it was before a year ago, but we're ready for that change. I personally see a much smaller face-to-face market for viewing facilities, certainly for the next 18 to 2 months, unless we come up with something dynamic. But what we have to do is embrace other technologies. And for those of us that are left, we need to think, how can we increase our individual market share? I'll pause for a moment. I've spoken for a long time.
Well, we've got about 10 minutes left, Bob, in total. So I'm going to invite the other panel members to unmute and stick their cameras back on and just hear from everybody, where do we think we're going as we start to get vaccinated? I've had mine, I think Bob's had his, and things are moving. What is going to go forward in the qual world? What sort of things are we going to see face to face? And I think, Chris, what you're showing us really needs to be in person. We know, I think, what's going online, but Patrice.
I think, if you work with a lot of food companies, you have already hit that place where nobody can taste the food. So that's been a problem for us. We have done a couple of studies where we've shipped out what we can, but I am very much looking forward to being able to do more in person. And we have already had the opportunity to do small, one-on-one where the person bringing in the food masks completely up and brings it in. But, food is something if you need them to taste something, that you just can't do it online.
Yeah, Holly?
I think we're actually going to see more ethnography. I think being able to actually be with the consumer at the point of consumption or the point of purchase, that's something that's missing with COVID as well, really is going to give a new flavor, something that we're missing today in research that is super, super powerful and immersive for qualitative learning.
I'll give you a wonderful example of that. I was talking the other day on a panel with Yasmin Dufany from Salomon. Salomon make all the sporting products and so on. And one part of her normal research, no COVID around, is to go on a trail run for an hour with a customer, finding out how do they use the products, where do they put their keys, and all of these sort of things. Well, even if you get a virtual reality, it's not the same as trail running for an hour with a customer. And that's, Chris, pretty deep immersive.
That's really deep immersive, and I have no interest in doing that run with her or anybody else. No, thank you.
So Bob, what sort of things do you think we're going to see from June the 21st in the UK? That's when we're fully open.
We're going to see, we're all going to go to a nightclub, and we're all going to have a party because nightclubs open the 21st. We're going to be outside after 10 p.m. and actually have something to do. I love the thumbs up. I think for our industry, we are going to actually mirror what we see happening around us. We had a group conversation with about 15 facilities this morning. We talked about when should we start promoting that we're really live, really open, we can get back to a sense of normality. And what we're waiting for is making sure the R number doesn't increase, the death rate is really down to a very low number, the infection rate is down, so the governments don't change their minds. So we can get to a point and we can start seeing people, which here in England will be April 12th, they can go and sit outside a pub. I'll use the pub analogy, it could be any other place, but from May the 17th, they can go inside a venue. And I think from when people are getting comfortable with that, because we know there are so many people that just do not want to leave their house. But I think from June 21st, when we are allowed to do those things, I think face-to-face is going to be about 6 weeks to 8 weeks behind that, because everybody's going to want to go on holiday. Once they've got the holiday done, they've got all of this out of the way, September, October, November is when we will start to see volumes of groups and work coming back to our facilities. But I'll finish on this point here. We will see far more of a hybrid way of doing things, and I call it the dawn of the qualiverse. I've been watching too many Marvel and DC films. We are at the dawn of the qualiverse, where we will have a hybrid approach, and it could be online in the facility where actually one or two participants may be on a screen. We'll have a mixture of one moderator in the room. We may have another moderator getting involved elsewhere. But I think all the work that Patrice, Holly, and Chris have done is all going to mesh together. And we have to help drive it rather than being reactive to what our clients might want.
I'm sure that's right, because you mentioned with the clients streaming in, international travel is going to be limited for quite a lot longer. So you're not going to have a client flying in from Australia to watch the groups. So building that in, and then as Patrice was talking about, the 360 camera where it actually shows the picture of whoever's talking properly. And then thinking about combining Chris's work with Patrice's comment about drones. Could be really fun. Well, that brings us to the end of our time at the moment. So thank you, Bob. That's been really enlightening, and let's hope that things do indeed start to get better quite soon. And thank you, Holly, Patrice and Chris, for joining in the discussion.